It's bang on cue. Thanks, Rob. Delighted that you're all able to join us this morning. And I think we've got a good crowd in this morning. We'll hang on a second because I know that 11 o'clock is sometimes end of lessons, the break times and things like that in schools. So there may be people joining over the next couple of minutes. But while we're just hanging on in there, we hope everybody's keeping as fit and well and healthy as possible, and COVID numbers are down. We've got a few off around these parts, haven't we, Rob? But hopefully we're going to make it through to the end of term. How many days left now? I'm not counting, Rob. It's just too disappointing to count another a day left because then we're going to still be on holiday, and then what we're going to do? Well, before we get to come back to work. That's not good. Okay, so as usual, we've got Dean behind the scenes making everything happen for us. So large thanks to Dean. He's going to be chipping in with a bit of a sales pitch during this morning for the pie, because Dean is our main pie seller, and that's a new title, and he's going to be talking a bit about that. Some of you have signed up, which is brilliant, and we want as many of you to sign up as possible. This whole concept of pie might be new to some of you, so stay tuned and you'll find out more about it. Okay, so my name's Kieran. I'm the CEO here at Swaycliffe. I know many of you. But welcome, very warm welcome to somebody who might be joining us for the first time. And what we'll try and do is give a little bit of background context to each of the agenda items we've got today, so that if you are new to it, it's not too bamboozling. On my left, introduce yourself. Hi, my name's Rob Quiner, and I'm the principal at Swaycliffe Hospital. And on my right,
my name's Rob. I'm the vice principal, and I'm going to be mostly talking about sort of the data and computer programs that allow us to see what's happening in the quality of life.
Brilliant. Okay, and Rachel is in the other room, and she's making sure that everybody is admitted to the meeting, and she's going to record the meeting this morning for anyone who couldn't make it. So we just want to make you aware of that. And if there are any examples where names come up, we will edit all of that out, so please don't worry about any of that. By way of introduction, let's have a look at our agenda. We had hoped that this would be a live meeting, but of course we all know the reasons why it can't be. We will get back to live meetings at some point, but for the minute, here we are on Teams.
It is actually live, it's just not in person.
There's a difference. There's a difference.
We haven't pre-recorded the recording.
This is what I've got to put up with first.
Cleverly anticipated the questions that might come.
Okay. All right, that's enough. So we've got our agenda worked under our usual headings, working with students, working with families, working with partners, working with resources. Really delighted today that we're going to get a presentation from Ian Dale at the NAS, who's going to be talking to us about their bit of action research around key working. And those of you who've been in the network a while will know that we presented our findings on that earlier in the year. I think it was around Easter time. So really looking forward to hearing what Ian's got to say and the findings from their key working study. And there's always lessons to be learned, and that's the beauty of the network. It's about sharing best practice. None of us have the monopoly of wisdom on this. We're all learning from each other. And what we like to try and do is to facilitate some of these conversations, but really what we want is everybody else to be joining in. So some of the agenda items this morning, we're going to give a flavour of some of the work that we've been doing here, but really what we want people to do is to either put their hands up, or Dean, can they use a chat function to be able to...
Yeah, there's a chat function.
Chat function, so you can just put ideas in there, so that we can collate, lists of information that we can all go, actually, that's something we might want to look at. Because when we look at the big poster behind us, the QoL framework, which everybody has, let's remember what it says at the bottom. It talks about how all of this collective data, we use it to inform curriculum, operational and strategic planning. So we're looking at that collectively for all our students, all your students, and for all your families, all of our families, as well as looking at the individual needs. And so one of the things we thought would be really helpful to start us off, and Rob is going to take a lead on this, is to get a sense of when all that data is collected, and some of you won't be at the point where you've done enough surveys to have a pool of data, but we thought it would be helpful for you to see what it looks like. What does the data look like? How can we cut it? How can we use it? And how are we using it? It's giving some examples to inform that curriculum, operational and strategic planning. And that's really important because as you go through your data collection points, and we do one at the end of each term, we just did one last week, that gives us another data set, which is an evaluation on the previous set of surveys. And so we're building longitudinal sets of data. So I'm going to pass over to Rob. He's going to chat to you about it and have a think about. You can think about what we're doing here, but remember, this is about how you're going to translate this into your context. And obviously, Rob's available to take any tricky questions afterwards. I mean, Rob, if you let him do that.
No, you can just walk away now. Thank you very much. And I think the idea of everyone feeding back sort of ties into this as well. So we've been developing these bits of software and ways of looking at data. That's also been driven by what our sort of partners have told us what's going to be useful, so we've been able to add all that in. I think what we'll do is we'll start with the pie, and we'll just kind of reverse back, and we've got some new developments that we've made. It's worth kind of going back to the beginning and just reminding anyone who hasn't seen this how it works. Okay, so this is the pie that Kieran's been talking about. It's a piece of software that is available to everyone. We've set it up so that it covers 4 areas, Kieran, which are
commitment, planning, implementation, evaluation. The pie.
Excellent. So we know.
And see the pie seller over there.
So yes, we'll get to how we get it in a second. But this is a great tool for implementing quality of life into your organisation. It kind of lets you set out how you're going to do it and assign who's going to do those jobs and see how you're getting on with the implementation of it. Just very briefly, we've made a video to cover this, but very briefly, it enables you to kind of set your targets, put policies and any information that you need to be able to achieve that. It enables you to be able to assign those tasks to members of staff in the school and have an overview of how you're getting on with implementing it, because quality of life isn't just something that you can say we're doing and it's in place. There's actually quite a bit to it, and it takes a bit of time to achieve it through the school or organisation. So actually it does need managing, and you do need an overview of how you're getting on in various parts, and that's from governors to key working to policies and all the rest of it. It's not a kind of sort of 1 week job.
Rob, if people wanted to see the video and they haven't seen it yet, or they enjoyed it so much they want to see it again and show it at Christmas, where do they find it?
I think it's on our website, but we also sent a link out in the newsletter, so we can send that.
We can send that out
and make that available.
Okay.
How you get it, you'll need to sign up, and Dean, how should they do that?
So
call?
Yeah, you can contact the school directly, you can call us, you can email me, and I will then set you up with a pie, and it doesn't take me a huge amount of time, so I'll be able to do that for you quite quickly. Once we set you up with the pie, we also want to give you a Microsoft team so that you can work together within your teams to complete the tasks on the pie. The pie belongs to you, it's your tool. We've developed it so that you can take ownership of it, and if you need to adapt the pie to be appropriate to your setting, then that's absolutely what you should do, and we can help you do that. We've signed up a few schools now, and we've started to run the pie with them, and I'm hoping it's been a useful tool. And again, have a look through and see what's there. And we've set up the 4 different sort of buckets of the progress that you want to make through the pie, and you can use the resources that we've attached to those tasks to see how you might achieve, completing those tasks within your school.
That's brilliant. And I think the other thing to add in there is we will be adding to the PI resources bank so that it becomes dynamic, and hopefully as you all start to develop your own resources, this becomes a way of sharing those resources between all of us.
I think as well, we've built everything in Microsoft, so everyone has the software, it's not been involved in software. Hopefully, we all use Microsoft products every day, so it's quite easy to familiarise yourself with it. Buttons you used to, formats we used to, we haven't got stuck in some.
And Rob, how much does it cost?
Absolutely nothing. So it's yeah, I think it's really important to say as well, there's going to be a place where hopefully it's not just about waiting already, it's just about breaking about things. It's a place where we can all share good practice on each other. And I think with the situation like COVID, we've got insurance schools, all not been out about as much as we like, and this is more important than ever, really important to us. So we can be sort of self-reflect on what other people are doing and improve our practice for their own setting. So to me, who I can use IT, I'm terrible, the fact it is that Microsoft product, it is really easy to install on the computer, it is really familiar to work with, I think it's really,
Definitely. And it should feel just like using any other Microsoft package that you'll have. This is just a very quick view of sort of management view of how people are getting on with the various tasks, so we can sort of see here that here's
force management coming up.
After the meeting. It's a really great tool to get QoL embedded, so I would kind of recommend people do that. And again, linking back, it enables us to see what people are stuck on actually, and then we can maybe run some training or get together and, if 2 or 3 schools are stuck on the same bit or wondering how to develop that, it enables groups of people to get together. So,
I mean, in the same way, it sort of replicates what the framework is saying. We're going to use that data to inform our training plan, and so it just helps us to help you better.
Brilliant. Okay, so onward. So we've been developing this software and sort of data tracking systems for a while now, and just to give you some idea of what's been going on, so we kind of work with a local IT company, but here are some of the updates that have been happening. So we're constantly updating it, constantly making it better, constantly taking feedback from inside the school and outside the school about what people want, what's going to be useful to key workers, what's going to be useful for management teams to see what the trends are in the school. So as you can see, there's been a lot of updates and a lot of additions and a lot of development going on, and that continues. So again, going back, if you subscribe to the system and use the tools that we've developed, there's a set of questionnaires that automatically get sent out to students and parents. They get an email, they're able to fill that in either with their key worker or on their own if they want to. And that's automated. You don't have to do very much to make that work at all. And then we get the data back from that. So that's pretty useful. These are our questions, but there's a facility if you want to kind of adapt the questions slightly, we can do that. If you want to do the questions at a different time, we can set the timings of when they're sent out. So that's been a real big development.
The school has also lined up Blue Planet, haven't they, to have a helpline so people can bring their helpline. We're financing that at the moment, so if people through the setup to get inserting email addresses, bring their OIC of the file and
That's it.
all those stuff, they can get help with that to get it all in there. That automates that. All everyone's data sits within their own school system.
Yes.
So for GDPR reasons, we're not holding anyone's data, so it's sat within your own policy, your own system, and there is Deans available, and there is this Blue Planet helpline to help you with installation, the software, and all those sorts of things. So I think, and then after that, you get your email addresses in, pings out the questionnaires, and it sits straight into the system, so you haven't got to worry about that, and then we can help you navigate through that point.
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's a really important thing because parents might be worried about GDPR and what's happening to the data. It is, we don't get to see that. That's sat on a virtual server is created, that's yours, no one else can see it, it's encrypted, so there's not any worries around security. In the future, it might be quite nice to anonymise the people that are taking part in the surveys and see what kind of
bigger data there is, but we're not there yet. But it could be something that's useful to see what's happening, whether there are trends in certain areas in the country or across the country, whether there are things that we can look at as a group. Okay. One of the developments, which seems like a small thing, but being able to see who's completed the survey and not, so that we can send reminders out. That was something that was asked for, that we had developed, so we can quickly see who hasn't completed the survey, and we can send them resend them the link without sending the link to everyone, because that could be quite annoying. So small but useful addition. For those who haven't seen it, this is what the data looks like when it comes back.
Sorry to interrupt, but Lisa asked how to access the progress matrix. I know you're showing it now, but can you show how to access it as well?
So which one is that? This one here.
So what you're actually showing, how you get
yes. To it. Okay. So if you've signed up, you'll get access to this dashboard, and I'll go into the reports. And you'll see these options. You'll log in as a member of staff. You'll see these options. We'll click on progress. We'll select a person, and I'm going to pick Mr. Burton Shaw, because I know he's not a student. And then you'll get a list of the surveys that he's completed and what they've rated the questions as. You can also put that alongside a parent if you want to do, or another student if you wanted to make a comparison, but I'm not going to do that today because I want us to just stick with this data here. So we can see that Tony's not completed a couple of surveys there, but we wind forwards. A development with this, we've been able to do this for a little while, but the development with this is being able to set targets. Now, it's really important to be able to show progress. If we're not doing anything about this, then why bother collecting the data? So it's important to say, okay, if someone's struggling with any aspect of the questionnaire, we should be able to put some resource in and try and make that better for them. That's the whole point of doing this, isn't it? To try and make it better for people. So there's an addition of this little T, so we can click on that. We can set the target or intervention that we think is needed for that young person. And then the next time the survey's taken, we would hope to see an improvement. So we hope to see it turn from red to green or yellow, or be getting better. And then we can write up whether there's been an improvement in the next T. It's a brilliant way of showing progress for sort of outside of academic progress, really. It's the missing piece where we can say, this young person was really struggling with this. We've done this piece of work. It's worked or not worked, and there might be a series of interventions before we can make a difference. It's not.
So that could link really nicely with outcomes for education, health and care plans, provide an evidence base for annual reviews.
Definitely.
And we're sort of thinking about how we can export those targets and drop them straight into the annual review report. Yeah, so something we can come on
next.
to.
Yeah, so the next stage of that is being kind of able to export that so that we can include it in an annual review or report for a young person, and that's kind of one of the next developments that's coming at the moment. We're having to sort of cut and paste that out, but that can be quite time consuming. So we will be having a button to press that exports those targets for that young person into a Word document. It will go straight into a report, and that sort of makes the circle, doesn't it? Yeah. We've asked the young person what they're struggling with and what's going well. We've put some intervention in. We've monitored that. We've seen whether it got better or not, or worse, and then
And I think the nice part of that is it's the students' evaluation in the next QoL survey about how they feel that progress has been made or otherwise. We can have a view as adults, and families can have a view because we'll get their responses as well. But this is hearing student voice on whether they feel that progress is what they were wanting it to be. And that's a really powerful part of this. So we're hearing that student voice and the family voice, and we can triangulate that with what we see as the responsible adults.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that normally what happens is adults do an evaluation of whether it's better or not. This is absolutely young people who are are telling us what's happening and whether what we're doing is helping them or not. And ultimately, that's what we're here for, isn't it? Yeah, helping people.
Can I ask a question? How do schools get a hold of this system? How can they get access to it?
Well, they need to. I mean, if they can contact you, or they can contact Blue Planet directly, and we can get them signed up. Does that help?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to publish the Blue Planet number again, so people know how to get signed up to the system.
Maybe and actually be very helpful if we can collate that with Dean as well, because then we can set people up with the data collection at the PI, and we can synchronise all of that.
I think as a school we spent significant amount of developing this piece of software, haven't we? And it's not something we just muddled together. It's sort of been in the evolution for
2 years.
2 years, and we've worked with software developer at the person, and they've tweaked it and built it again. This is built in a Microsoft product, Power BI. So again, it should be easy for staff to use, familiar for people to use. Ultimately, it is leading on to the point where the schools that are signed up, we are going to need a bit of a contribution from people somewhere down the line, just to help with future developments in some ways. It's not to make any money. It's not to, we're absolutely not interested. And we're talking about a very small sum of money. In some ways, the more people that there are, the less it will be.
Yeah.
And we'll nudge that either way. The number of about £400 a school has been computed. I mean, it might not need to be as much as that, because I think we're happy to have incurred the cost of this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some costs in kind of storing that data securely and making sure that it complies. There are some costs which we're taking at the moment, but that's.
We can talk about that probably a bit more at the beginning of next year, when we've got a bit more clarity about what our financing arrangements are.
So going back to the target setting, we're kind of looking at the idea of having, because we know what the question is, and we know what resources we can put in to help young people. We're looking at making a bank of resources and interventions that we know work. And again, that's in development. It's not quite as easy as that, but that could be something that we can share in the future. A lot of these tie into our independence curriculum, which is also available on the website. And if you contact us, we can send it. But the independence curriculum that we've developed was kind of made alongside the quality of life framework, so that we know the curriculum should be able to help in lots of these domains. So the two are really well linked. So often, if there's a red or something someone's struggling with, the answer to that often is in the independence curriculum, or the sort of wider curriculums.
I think we spoke a bit about last time, where people had tracked where some of these issues could be picked up across the curriculum: PSCG, tutor programme, therapy sessions, independence lessons, key working, and I think that's going to look slightly different for everybody. But I think it is looking at that data that we're creating for the young people and for the families, and prioritising that, not just doing what we've always done, because that's what you do in year 9. Actually, in year 9, if people are saying they're really worried about relationships, then potentially, at Sweden now, we're moving that around to address those issues with young people and those families, so they're being picked up in a timely manner. What's important to them.
And I think the other important part of this is that independence curriculum that Rob mentions is a really good way of engaging with families, because they can have a copy of that, they can look at that, what can they contribute to that, and so that there's a partnership working on some of these issues, and the young people can see that there's a joined up approach between home and school, and we're working collectively to get the best outcomes.
And for us, that independence curriculum directly feeds into the young person's risk assessment, what they can and what they can't do, and they can see why we're saying, no, you can't go off into town on your own because we're not sure you're safe here, not safe there. That then is potentially affecting their quality of life, so that's what we're prioritising them to work on, so they can be heard and have a voice in what they're doing and how they're feeling.
Yeah, so the independence curriculum is a really nice way of showing young people why some things are open for them to do and some things aren't. It's not just an arbitrary adult saying you can't go into town or it's too risky for you to do that. Young people can see, actually, within the independence curriculum, I haven't covered the bit about, I don't know,
Stranger danger.
stranger danger. So therefore, you need to know about straightening your danger to go into town. So if I do that work and I can demonstrate I know it, that opens up some new possibilities. So it's turning a risk assessment round to a positive, really, and not the negative thing that it's often been in the past.
And that is quite a journey for young people. Launching that with somebody in the upper sixth form is probably not time to do it. It's sort of been embedded with us now, linking to that risk assessment for 5 or 6 years. So it's starting that in year 8 and then talking about that around award trips and what happens on the weekends and linking into them what they can do when they go swimming.
Yeah.
The fact that they're going to go do junior lifeguard because that's important to them, and just building it all in a positive way.
Yeah.
That you want to be ready to do that. To be ready, you do this. And then they feel, you know, then they have a better experience because they have all prepared for things. It's a better.
Yeah.
That's what you're all about, isn't it?
So, so like I said before, there's a provision here to kind of put one set of surveys alongside another, and what we would normally use that for is student and parent survey, and that can often tell you, give you a kind of good source of information about. Sometimes the answers are the same or the views are the same. Sometimes they're very different, and that will tell us something about what's happening potentially at home versus in school. It also gives us a good source when we're surveying parents about what is going on at home and individually, so this would be a key worker, individually looking to see whether there's anything that we can do with young people that's going to improve that situation at home. So it could be, I don't know, never tidy his room or wanders off or whatever it might be, and then we can do some targeted work to hopefully have a positive impact at home. We can't solve all the problems of our parents, that's not possible. But sometimes there are some things which are really quick fixes for us, that if there's a huge thing at home, it's actually really easy for us to help with or fix or help them help themselves, and that can have huge impact on our students in school and huge impact at home. So we're not kind of saying we can solve everyone's problem, but certainly it's helpful to know what's going on. You know, you can't. Young people aren't separate from their parents or separate from school. It's all one kind of.
And what you're talking about, Rob, Emily Bishop,
QD.
Emily Gardner will be absolutely delighted to hear, because her research, if you remember, Emily from University of British Columbia, talks about, you know, family systems and how young people are interconnected parts of their family. So, you know, a young person has an impact on the family and vice versa. So if we don't hear that family voice, we're missing a really important part of the evidence base on what we might be making decisions about.
And I think it's an area for us to maybe use some training or develop a little bit in helping our key workers broach some of those answers that our families might give. Our staff are brilliant at working with young people. They're not experts at working with adults. So that's an area where we're going to put some resource in and do a bit of training with our key workers and staff about how do you approach sensitive issues at home.
Talking about performance management before this meeting today, and we're sort of trying to address that through there, aren't we?
Yeah, so I think we have it's taken a few years to get there. We did some work with the Cotswold School and how they, outstanding school, big secondary school, Will Moore was their teacher, he was an officer Spencer, and how they did their whole school improvement planning and how they laid that out. They had it under the Ofsted headings. We've divided ours up into working with students, working with families, working with partners, working with resources. That then feeds into our strategic goals as a charity. So we have strategic goals and how they're linked to those. And then the layer down at the departmental level, when they do the school improvement planning, that then relates back to things in the whole school SIP. We then take a whole school SIP and we self-evaluate that by not creating another document, but just by looking at each of those things, colour coding them, amber, green, red, and at which half term we achieved each of those things and how we measured that. And at the very start of the year, we performance manage everybody and we relate those back to the areas within the SIP. So we have a progress and standards, performance management target, an autism target, and a best practice target. And this year, our autism target is a focus on working with families. That for staff can be quite tricky. The staff think, what can I do to help that family? And what we've really tried to work on with staff is what can you do, the work you can do with the young person to enhance the family's experience at home. An example which Rob has just given with being able to sit around the meal table, or being able to tie your shoelaces so we can get out of the house a bit quicker, or being able to do that. But using that data and working with the families is a big focus of what we're going to be doing in our inset this year as a staff team. The work that Tony Burns does, he's building up resource banks for smarter targets so that staff can do more personalised targets against those and have a starting point. There's something we want to share with people later in the year. And we're able to do some things on a more whole school level, where we now have a family forum meeting each half term, where we're looking at the data and identifying some of the areas that important families. So there was some awful things that happened in the press about trusting people, and there was stuff around the policeman who horrendous piece of work, horrendous things that young lady over COVID. Lots of families contacted the school or fed through that they had real concerns about social communication problems with our young people, about how they were vulnerable, and potentially what they perceived a good relationship to be, a good sexual relationship would be. So that made us, we reviewed our sexual relationships policy. We did some whole school training on consent, ages of consent. So we had a common language. That's another bit of research, give you that common framework and that common language across the school. We shared that with parents so they could have that common thing. And then that came from two areas really of how to keep themselves safe. But they're out and about as a young adult, somebody who thinks they're ready to do those things, and also how they could ensure that they're safe around other people as well, and that they have a good understanding of what that is. So that's one piece of work that's been highlighted in the quality of life framework.
Yeah.
It's actually, if someone makes a mistake or does something, commits a crime that they weren't aware of, or gets it wrong with the IT, and actually it was quite enlightening for all of us as well about the difference between an 18-year-old approaching a 17-year-old, what happens when a 15-year-old is going up a 16-year-old, and all those things. We've been able to talk that common language across the staffing body, across the families, across the governors as well. Actually, we've shared it with the governors, so everyone's clear on what's happening there. And I think that was a really timely piece of work, and that shouldn't have fitted into science in year 10 or PSHE in year 11. Actually, that needed to be done.
And I think it goes back to the number of, Charlotte's model of quality of life, and what we know about quality of life, it's dynamic and personal. And so that's why the collective data sets that we use inform our curriculum planning. That's a really good example of it. We can't wait until particular landmarks according to somebody else's timetable. And I think the other part of it, going back to what we're saying here on the framework poster, is the key worker, through doing that work with the families and the students, we're collectively looking at the targets for young people. Because what we want to make sure is that there's an understanding why families understand why we're working on particular things, and they're having an input into that. So we're using the family quality of life data to help us inform how we're setting targets for young people. But we're also using the family data for us to see how can we support families by putting on some training, by putting some resources on the website about things, signposting people to different things, or putting people in touch with other organisations that might be better placed to help than we can do.
I think really important, I had that as the principal of the school, I had that one phone call from that one family, and then we went back and looked at the data. That reinforced that was a bigger issue. We've also maybe a few years ago, is that mother she's really worried about that? And oh yeah, we must look at that. But actually, using what we did now, and it did drive what we're doing, and it did drive our curriculum. I think that's a real live example of how we always thought we knew what people wanted, and we knew what families wanted, and we knew what was important. But actually, by being open to that, being open to the data, letting the data drive your practice, it has probably improved what we're doing. I think the next step on from that for us is to potentially, this is another one of our targets for school, is to look at what young people feel that when they've left Swakeling Park School at 19, so when they transitioned out of school, when they're 20, 21, 22, 23, how they reflect on their time with us and what they feel could have been important and what they felt we missed. we like to think we give them everything. We like to think we fully tool them up. We look at our transitions data. We had no needs. We have this there. Actually, what we might find on the 22, if only you'd done a bit more on this, then I wouldn't have got myself in this pickle or read that. Or, and obviously, there'll be some individual themes there where we can't solve. Well, maybe we do need to look at individual things actually, but then we might find from that data, for people who left school, there's clumps of things that we just didn't know that we didn't know. And that is something we can then embed in more of our practice, leading through and helping our people preparing them for adulthood, which is all into the outcomes of the education health and care plans, and the focus of annual reviews, focus of our school improvement planning, and the focus of performance management targets, and the risk assessments, and it all fits in.
And these are, of course, all the things that all of us, in whatever shape or form our organisations look, we're all dealing with the same processes and structures and systems that we have to have in place. So this is the way, you know, the framework really helps to give some structure, common framework, common language. Good old David Reynolds. So thank you, David. Rob,
Right,
thank you.
The data. So I just,
The evidence.
Just to go back to the, we talked a little bit about families there. Some of the ways we've helped through our family forum, driven by listening to families, the data that they're giving us. So we talked about the sex and relationship policy and parents' concern over what was going on in the media and how they should approach that. So that's something that we put in place for them. We had a forum, they were able to watch, ask questions, see the kind of curriculum that's being delivered to the young people in the school. There were some wishes to know what was happening in therapy, how we do, what the therapists are doing, can they help at home? So that was another session that we ran for parents, because that's what they were telling us, that's what they needed, so that's what we did. Nothing to do with school really, but our families were saying over lockdown they feel isolated, that they haven't spoken to anyone, haven't been out of the house, haven't been. We're in the middle of Oxfordshire, our families live all over the country. So we put in place a pop-up restaurant so that they were able to come and meet other families, do a bit of socialising, find out what's going on, share phone numbers, and that was really well appreciated. And we did some transitions out work. So a lot of the families where their kids are leaving this year, next year, start to worry about what's next. So we put a session on around kind of transitions out, what help was available, filling PIP forms in. So it's a really kind of, families are saying this and we're responding with what they're asking us to do, because only they know what they're worried about. We can't guess that.
We also did a whole school family day at the end of last half term, where normally we load that up and make it quite structured. We fed back from families, fed back, they'd like that to be a little bit more informal. They'd like that to be an opportunity to just go around and chat to people that have been in school for nearly 2 years, I think we were, maybe 18 months. So we set that up and we hosted that, and we put a nice lunch, and people just go out to talk to tutors and things like that, which is different to normally we tie that with progress meetings. We did the progress meeting separate to that, and we've had really, really good feedback again. And again, what I keep realising by looking at this data is that we wouldn't have changed as much as we changed to meet those needs as we would have done if we hadn't had this open dialogue and in a structured way, not just one parent shouting the loudest. So I think keeps going back to it for me every single time. The importance of this piece of work is we had 45 children in the school, students in the school, we now got 70 odd, but we thought we knew them inside out. This has made us more informed from the student and the family perspective, and we're able to improve their quality of life more and make them more ready to learn and make them more ready to make progress. That's all the other things that we're doing by being able to listen to them and having a format to listen to them through.
I think that's exactly the nub of it, isn't it? And, you know, we've chucked a few examples out there of things that we've been doing, but we know that was really just to get the conversation going, because what we'd really love is for people to use the chat function to just, you know, put one-liners in of stuff that you've done to support families, and we'll collate a list and then we'll circulate that, because there may be some great ideas. We'll add the ones that we put in, but if you, the more we get in there, the more helpful it'll be to everyone. And then that helps us all when we're looking at our self-evaluation at the end of the year, when we're looking at our reports for governors, we can get a sense of what are we doing to support families for schools, like the transition outward? What are we doing family to family, like the dinner we put on? What are we doing to support families in their homes? And I know lots of schools did home visits and Zoom meetings at home during COVID. What are we doing down the training line of things, whether it's sex and relationships or therapy or other things that are the real prevailing issues in your schools? Let's get a sense of what they are. We'll organise them under those headings and we'll send that out to everybody. But the more we get in from everybody, please don't be shy about putting anything in. We've just blasted a few things out, but there'll be some brilliant ideas out there, and the more that we share, the better. I think that'd be a great way forward, wouldn't it? Be a real step forward.
Okay, good. Right, so the last sort of major development is this tool for looking at whole school data, and this wouldn't necessarily be used by key workers. It would be more of a sort of leaders and managers tool. It's a little bit more complex to use. It's based on a product that called Power BI that Microsoft have and should be available to you. But what it does is enables you to see a lot of data sort of visualized. So won't spend ages doing this, but you might be interested in what are the main issues in the school? What are most of the boys or families answering? What are they telling us is a problem? That's really quick to do with this piece of software. So so at the moment we're looking at this year's surveys, term 2, going to look at student data, and all I'm interested in today is, you know, where should we put our resources? What are young people struggling with? So really quickly, here are all the questions, and they're color-coded with the answers, so not at all, moderately, but I'm just interested in very much. So straight away, I can see a list of the questions that have been answered, very much a problem. And that enables me to hone down and say, okay, which students have answered that question, very much a problem, and how many are there? And from that, we can go back to the curriculum, back to the support, and see whether we can do whole school pieces of work that can capture some of these issues that are going. Might be all of our students are really worried about online safety this term, and if they are, then we should be doing that in school. We should be doing that in the residential. We should be putting a lot of effort in, and then we'd hope to see next time we do the survey that question is reduced down. Can do the same for families. What are most of the families worried about? And that goes back to kind of most of the families were worried about transitions out. We responded by doing that piece of work. That data then showed us that they were less worried about it. And this is a constant. This has to happen all the time. We're always looking at the data, thinking what's top of our list, and actually turn it around. What's going really well, and why is that going well? So let's do more of that. So we've kind of clicked very much, but we could select a question and really drill into that. So have a look at this one here is able to get where I need to be, and that shows us a breakdown of how the students or families are answering that question. Are most people saying it's positive? Are most people saying it's not so good? And we can do that. We can compare, again, students with families. We can look at family data, student data. We can look at part A, part B, and you can chop this data any way you like. So you're not restricted with I have to see it in this way. Power BI is a really powerful piece of software that's used commercially for sales and all sorts of other things, but we've put our data into it and it enables us to kind of chop it up in lots of
different. So you could look at the data from, say, new starters or pre-admission students or those who are just about to leave, or any of those different parameters, and then figure out, okay, now we know that, let's think about how dynamic our curriculum can be, and are there any tweaks we might need to make organisationally to achieve that? And
that would definitely have an impact on our school improvement plan about where we're spending money or not spending money, where we're putting our staffing or not. It's a really brilliant tool. And again, this has been developed with feedback from inside the school and outside the school about what people need to know, what would be really useful data to have. And we can actually now quite quickly manipulate this dashboard to give you the options that you might want to see.
And fits in beautifully with the Ofsted framework.
Yeah.
The 2019 fits in with that. You're not just doing what you've always done, because you've done it. How does the curriculum meet the needs of your young people and your students?
Yeah.
It couldn't correspond, align better with those. I think it's not, we're still doing English, we're still doing maths, there's still lots of things that are carrying on. You just genuinely change your ethos and the culture of the way you work and what we talk about and how we do things. So it shouldn't turn everything on its head in day one. Do you see what I mean? But it will just keep evolving things to become more and more student-centered as you evolve through thinking and working like this potentially.
That's a lot of information we've given out. We'll take some questions, well, Rob will. And then I'm just giving Ian a bit of a heads up. What we'll probably do is we'll take any questions and then we'll just give everybody a 5-minute breather just to have a cup of tea in a wee, or the other way around, up to you. And then we'll ask Ian, who's going to give us a bit of a presentation on the key working action research from the NAS schools, which we'll really look forward to. Dean, have we got any questions?
We don't, but we do have some lovely contributions about what schools have done for families.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, keep those coming in, please, and we'll keep compiling the list. We're going to do another list a bit later on as well about how we're supporting staff and QoL and staff. So we'll do that one at the end, but let's build this one first. Okay, well, let's just take a breather now. Then, if we've got no further questions, and there'll be time for questions at the end. So if we say 5 minutes, it's 11:46, 11:51. We will return, and then hopefully Ian gives us a chance to liaise with Ian and get set up for his presentation. So we'll see you in 5. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks everyone, thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you've, look at us, Lemsip, keeping the nation going.
We should be sponsored by Lemsip.
No, we should actually, yeah. I've had a change. Sick of the yellow one, we're now on the purple one. We don't mind mixing it up here. Okay, so we're gonna, hopefully Ian's there and with us, and can we communicate with, there he is, brilliant. Hi Ian, lovely to see you.
Hi, Darren. Hi.
And ready to roll.
Great. Thanks for inviting me to talk about this piece of research. We just got the report at the end of last week, or the latest draft of it, so I haven't got any slides. It can be a bit boring anyway, can't it? So it's just going to be me talking. I'll try not to go on for more than about 15 to 20 minutes. Feel free to interrupt if you've got any questions, or Kieran or Richard, if you spot anybody's posted any questions, just stop me and I'll try and answer those. And in due course, obviously, we're really keen to share the reports, publish it, take it to conferences and so on. I think it's been a reasonable success as a research exercise, but I'll say a bit about that as well. So I'll set the scene first of all. I know I've got some of my NAS colleagues on the call as well, but I'll just set the scene for everybody as to what we were doing. And then I'll say a bit about the methods without going on too long about that, and then give you a flavour of the findings from our independent research consultant. And the overall message, in case anybody has to go before the end, is a thumbs up for what we did. It was a pretty positive set of findings in terms of how this has been implemented in the NAS so far. So just go back to the beginning. So as Ken said, my name's Ian Dale. I'm head of research monitoring and evaluation at the NAS. We've got 7 special schools, pretty varied in lots of ways actually, in terms of their size, the number of pupils, how long they've been open, what sort of intake they've got in terms of academic potential and co-occurring conditions and so on. So a pretty good test bed actually for rolling out this the key worker approach. So that's what we did. The time period we're looking at, sort of spring, summer term, earlier in the year, and 6 of the 7 schools took part. And the approach that we took was to sign up a couple of key workers on average from each school. So we had 14 key workers participating in this piece of research spread across six of the schools, mostly learning mentors, but a few other roles as well. There's a positive behaviour support, PBS lead, and one class teacher as well, but it's mainly learning mentors. And what we asked them to do was to keep a journal. So we went through ethical review first of all, and we gave them introductory sessions and asked them if they'd like to sign up. So it was entirely voluntary. And those that did, we asked them to keep a journal over the sort of term and a half that we ran it, and we gave them some prompts in terms of what to record, some reflective prompts on a weekly and a monthly basis. We gave them the option to do it either on paper or using Teams. Most people use Teams actually to keep the notes. So that was the core of the research. So you could call it action research in the sense that it was the participants just reflecting on their key worker role. And then we engaged an independent research consultant called Lene Buckle. Lene is based at Manchester University. She's doing a PhD on autistic inertia at the moment, which is a really interesting topic and something to look out for when she publishes that. But that gave us, obviously, Lene's academic insights. Lene's also autistic. We find that working with autistic researchers brings lots of benefits as well. So that definitely came out in the report that Lene's produced. So Lene was given access to the journals at the end of the term, and also managed to interview 12 out of the 14 key workers. 2 of them weren't available, but we used their journal material in the research as well. So that's what Lene had to draw on: the 14 journals, but also their transcripts, the recordings of the 12 interviews that she did. Lene also interviewed Joe Galloway, who some of you know is our NAS Schools Quality Lead. So that was the the method, the questions, what we were trying to find out. The key thing is this wasn't an evaluation. We weren't trying to measure improvements in quality of life or anything like that, or staff turnover and so on. We weren't collecting data. It was really an open-ended piece of research trying to gather some insights from the rollout. And I think that was the right call, actually, looking back, because I think it was successful, and it wouldn't worked as well if we tried to be a bit more prescriptive or just tried to count things. So that's the first thing. It wasn't an evaluation. So we had 3 research questions. The first one was whether we could learn any lessons from rollout. Obviously, whenever you innovate, there are lessons to be learned, mistakes, and that's absolutely fine. But the key thing is that you learn from them. So that was the first question, especially across different settings as well. The fact that we were doing this across 6 quite different schools. Second question was about, and I think we probably answered that to an extent. I'll come on to that. Second question was about problem solving, insights into problem solving, is whether the key worker approach was really a good basis and whether it promoted successful problem solving. And I think we got a good answer to that one as well. And then the third question was about perceived benefits, emphasis on perceived there, obviously, because we weren't collecting any data. We weren't also talking to families or the pupils themselves. This is just the perceptions of the key workers. So they were the 3 questions we're trying to answer. So I'll pause there because I've got very quickly gone through what we're looking at here and how we went about it. So any questions on that first of all? No, okay. Just interrupt me if anything comes to mind. So the report which Lene has produced, she's put the findings under 4 broad headings, and they're the main findings in themselves, actually. So I'll just run through those, and then I'll try and pick out a few key points to illustrate them, maybe a few quotes as well from the report. That's one of the great things about the approach that we took with the interviews as well. We've got some really great verbatim quotes from the key workers, which really sort of bring to life how it's been rolled out so far. So the 4 themes which Lene picked out. First of all, strong relationships with the child and family. Emphasis on both there. That was something which came out strongly from the interviews. Second, more effective child-centred approach. And again, some of these are pretty obvious and what you'd expect. This is really what the key worker role is all about, but that's a strong thing which Renee picked out as well. More effective child-centred approach. Third one was benefits and challenges for key workers, and there were definitely both of those. So I'll give an illustration of those. And then the 4th set of findings were really about the experiences of different key worker approaches, whether they would endorse it, whether they thought it was ready for rollout as well. So let's start with the first one, which is about strong relationships with the child and family. All of the key workers said that they felt they'd established a good, positive relationship with their pupil, with the child or the children in some cases, for whom they were a key worker. So that was really positive. What were they basing that on? They said that familiarity, the obvious things really, familiarity was absolutely key, and a really good understanding of the child's whole life and circumstances. So they put I would say they put as much, if not more, emphasis on a really strong relationship with the family, and that seemed to be something quite novel in a lot of cases. That's really what they attributed those perceived benefits to. I think was having that regular concept with the family. Let me try and illustrate that with a quote. So just going through May's report. So what one key worker said, a problem shared is a problem halved. So there's one exception, but generally all the parents felt it beneficial to simply talk about their child and the frustrations they'd experienced and the opportunity to simply offload to somebody without judgment. And they felt that was having that sort of open, balanced relationship was really the key to leveraging some benefits. There was a bit of a double-edged sword, I would say, to it. And a few people reported the fact that the key workers felt that they were so much taking on board so much in a lot of cases that one key worker described it as, used the word harrowing, in fact, and a bit stressful. the fact that they felt unable to solve the child or all of the problems in the child's life or the family's life. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, that you're open to a lot more in terms of emotional commitment, but overall definitely seemed to be something which the key worker role really promoted, and was the platform for those perceived benefits. Okay. So the second finding that they came up with was about being more effective child-centered approach, and probably one thing we didn't capture as much as we wanted to in the research was specific examples of this, and there were a few in the journals, but we found it was quite difficult to anonymise them, so they don't really appear in the report. But the general sense of it is that the key worker role definitely enabled problem solving, and the key to that in turn, a lot of the key workers reported, was staff collaboration. So it wasn't a question of, I'm the key worker, I found out this problem through my talking to the family, which is underlying the child's behaviour or whatever. It wasn't for them to solve, and it was really they attributed their successes to collaboration with other staff. You remember a lot of them in a learning mentor role, so that's obviously quite empowering if they felt able to talk to teaching staff and therapists and so on. So I think I've got a quote here to illustrate that as well, but quite exhausting as well, actually. Some people reported. So a couple of quotes. Well, first of all, here's one which is about perceived benefit. So one key worker said, name the student has made vast improvements both academically and socially, and I believe a lot of this was due to the work we have done together and the strong rapport we built. So that's great to hear. But then a different key worker further on gave slightly different other side of the coin, if you like. Let's find out, and talking about problem solving here, let's find out what's behind these behaviours that I've witnessed today. That's been more interesting, but also stressful, because I've then got to speak to the wellbeing committee, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, trying to unearth what it is. So that it's quite demanding thing to do, but that's certainly what they, as I say, they attributed their successes to their staff collaboration. Okay. So the third one was about benefits and challenges for the key workers, and again it was a pretty mixed picture there. Overall, people reporting that it really helped their job satisfaction. I think I've got a good quote for that as well. Just bear with me. Certainly, here's a good one. Seeing things come together for the children, strategy that's worked, blossoming relationship with parents and school, seeing a child able to self-regulate or with support, and most importantly, happy, has brought me a real sense of joy to my role. Well, that's great to hear, isn't it? That was one of the key workers. They actually wrote that in their journal rather than in the interview. But again, there's another side to it, and this comes through in the recommendations in terms of resourcing and having adequate facilities and so on. So I think it's a different key worker said, I'm having to record events in the school monitoring system. I'm having to make calls to parents, and then had to complete phone call logs, which meant time out of class, time away from supporting the teachers, time away from supporting the children. So that's really one of the big lessons from the NICE report is making adjustments in terms of time and resources. Pretty much all of the key workers felt that a bit more planning could have been done there to help them strike the right balance. The last thing was about experiences of different key working approaches. I say that all of the key workers felt that it had been implemented in a positive way. They felt that they'd got the support that they needed, both in terms of taking part in the research, filling in the journal and so on, but also in terms of the role. And there are a few specifics where they felt that they could have done with more support, and probably the main one was in terms of clarity about their role. So exactly what they were meant to be implementing. Was it the key worker role? What was their role in terms of quality of life measurement as well? What parts of the key worker role were expected and which were optional? Those kinds of things. So I think that's a really useful lesson going forward. Those were the key things which I picked out of it. What we want to do is play this back. We've got a couple of sessions with which the participants were invited to attend coming up, and we want to have another iteration because it is meant to be action research. So we want another iteration with Lene and the participants just to see whether they feel as though it was a fair representation of the evidence. But I'll pause there. I won't go through all of the recommendations because they sort of mirror the things that I've been talking about, which are about, I think, about the time and the resources and facilities getting a good match and so on. But I'll pause there and then just say a bit about strengths and limitations and what we've concluded from it so far. So again, I've gone through that really quickly, but hopefully it's given you a sense that overall successful, but there were definitely some lessons learned and some two sides of the same coin in terms of some of the issues.
Has anybody got any questions for Ian? Ian, that's fascinating. It's brilliant. And one of the things that rings so true from that is how all of that feedback from staff helps to inform operational and strategic planning. You know, some of the issues raised there about the time for the key working role, where does it start and where does it finish, the best practice sharing within. These are all things that can feed into training and help school improvement. And like Rob was talking about earlier, that feed into the school improvement plan as a result of action research. And I think this whole QoL culture helps us to be more reflective as organisations, whether we're looking at how we're helping students, how we're helping families, but also how we're evolving ourselves and our staff and how we are helping each other to be better at the jobs that we all want to do so well. Are there any particular questions that anybody'd like to raise with Ian? And Ian, that report, might that be available from all good bookstores soon?
I need to have Joe's not on the call today. I'll have a chat with him about our dissemination plans. But yes, I'm sure we're happy to make this public in some form or other, circulated to this group and disseminate it at a conference or two, I would think as well.
That'd be excellent, because I'm sure there's a lot in there that other people will either resonate with or will learn because they might be at the start of this journey. And I think the methodology that you employed there it was a very powerful way of hearing staff voice. We talk about student voice and family voice, and that was really that direct feedback about how it made people actually feel as much as what they were being asked to do. Any questions in the chat there, Dean, or any points?
Oh, yeah, Lisa's asked a question. She said, thank you for the information. We've launched ours and some very small minority comments related to this is just going to be more work for us. And did you find the same and how did you manage it?
Yes, get out of it.
That's one of the things that came out amongst the keywords. Obviously, the 14 research participants were absolute volunteers, and so there's probably a bit of bias there in terms of them being more predisposed and more committed to the role in the first place. But it promotes a bit, so that's absolutely a lesson that we've got to learn. Because I think we were looking at a sort of term and a half to 2 terms here, and I got the sense, especially talking to Lene, once the some of the benefits are going to stabilise, you know, the job satisfaction and the novelty of it are going to not wear off, but they're going to stabilise a bit, and that means that I think over time key workers will be a bit less tolerant of being asked to do too much, and so that definitely needs to be addressed. But it's a shame Jo is not on the call today because she could talk a bit more about that. So hopefully when we do the final report, we can come up with some practical recommendations as well.
Excellent, thanks. Rob, anything you'd like to chip in?
Yeah, I think from a starting point of view, it's been a very not a top-down thing. So everybody in the organisation is a key worker. So we managed to sort of make that so everyone has a really good understanding of what that role involves. It's been prioritising time, people to write that up and to deliver those sessions. So I know you know this, so that's part of what we're doing in your schools as well. But it has been not expecting people to do it on the end of their day or as an extra, you'd say yeah, you've got 2 lessons to be a key worker, you've got this to do this, you've got that.
We've actually got it in the timetable, haven't we?
Yeah, and it's made a whole school have to think a little bit differently about bringing staff up, because we haven't necessarily been able to have more staff. It's just been something that we've had to think about how we work as a school, because I think it's too big a job just to expect people to do. And the last bit that I think we have found, it has given staff a more interesting and more empowering job. So before, if you were an LSA, you might have to go from maths to English to science, you know, and actually now we're embedded in decision making, you're getting to go to a broader range of meetings, multidisciplinary team meetings, because you're the key person about that child. It's created, let's have a less top-down approach. Well, when we run meetings now, the key worker is the first one to speak. It's not Dr. Nicky Mills or Dr. John Baker or the principal. The key worker speaks first, because they've got the voice of the young person and the family, and they talk about the problem and they're bringing the problem to the meeting or the people it's about. So I think it's been giving people time, giving people training, giving people parameters of what they're working, giving people support when they're stuck, not expecting them to solve everything. If they come with a problem that's beyond their remit, you know, being able to take that off them and not them having to live with that all the way through. And then also sort of making sure that it's not hierarchical where people are dealing with things and then we're just giving them the answers. They're part of the solution and part of the answer as well. I think that's we've got to over time.
And hopefully that's made a huge difference within the organisation, hasn't it, about how people perceive the different disciplines, because all different disciplines are involved in that key working process.
And when we do have those meetings, little things like when we have multidisciplinary meetings, we get people who struggle to come to school, we have 2 or 3 a week, and that key worker being the first person to speak is really important. Because actually they're the one, we're probably going to leave them from their taxi, they're the one that's probably going to have to encourage them back into lesson, they're the one that's probably going to have to do that. And the last part, I think we got to after a period of time as well, is the key worker not being the person that's with the young person all day, being almost a little bit of an independent advocate for that young person. If well, I am, but let's pretend I'm not, backing Kieran all day to eat his dinner and do this and get this right and that right. Actually, then sit down at the end of the week and say, oh, let's key work. Actually, Kieran being able to go off to the dean, talk about what's going well and what's going badly, and a bit of reinforcing of that message, or being able to deliver back to the person working with the young person on a day-to-day of how that works. Residentially, we have put the key work with the same person on the house because it's a different level of care, different level of pastoral care with young people being under those residential school plans and all those other things. But yeah, I think we managed to refine it, but it is a challenge. I think that's really important. We hear about the challenges as much about the good stuff.
Sorry, no, go on. No, I was going to say, yeah, I completely agree with Rob. It's been very empowering for our staff team, and it's kind of taken the shift from, you know, the therapy team or the teachers or whoever is going to make the decisions to the key worker being the one to drive. They're almost kind of using the staff team as their resource to achieve what they need to achieve for their key child, which is a great way. So they have got permission to go and say, come on, where's the homework? Come on, we were supposed to have OT, that didn't happen. That's their role, which actually raises their status almost to the top, because we're just resources for them to be able to achieve their goals, which is helping young people.
I think everybody, to be fair, the senior leadership team don't key work. It's felt that we're there to support, drop it. So that is one level where we don't, but not making it so it's the most lonely people in the organisation, not most lonely, so the least well remunerated people doing all the work. Actually, everybody's doing that. And the key work updates the risk assessment. So we have a better understanding of our system through the school by all the staff. Mm-hmm. So the therapist knows that when they take young people out to generalise some skills they've taught them, strategies, they know where the risk assessment is, they know where the thing, you know, it's created.
And you know every system related to young people because they're working.
Around the TV team not doing it, was it felt that somebody having the ear of the principal or the vice principal probably wasn't healthy, do you see what I mean? Going there, that was too, and I think the staff are very happy with that. We were always available to be able to check in with and have different conversations and better deal with things that were more serious. And they had those people to come to have that overview, wasn't it? I think that's where it got to that. But that could always be looked at again. That's all right.
A few questions that have come in actually on this. So someone's asked how much time have we put into our timetable for key working, and how did we find the extra time slots? Have we had to give anything up to do that?
Yeah, I think we had to be brave. So we went Friday afternoons. So Friday afternoons is a bit of a difficult. Anyone who's been a teacher or working with young people trying to deliver double maths on a Friday afternoon is probably not the most receptive time. So we did tutor time on Friday afternoon, and then everybody goes away to a key worker. If the key worker's off ill or something, that's where the senior leadership team drop in and meet those young people, and it's a whole school event. And then we give them start LSAs across the board PPA time, which means they're brought in line with teachers, so they're not a poor relation to them again. And we've had to rejiggle our staffing. There's had to be some compromises where we've looked at where the source of the LSA and where they're used, and we did add a bit of staffing to that as well. That happened a bit as well.
And I think we also, because teachers are key workers as well, so some of their PPA time goes to this. So we will have to look at PPA time and how much of that is for actually PPA, how much is for cover, how much is for key working, and likewise for therapists and residential staff. So we're looking at, parity of time, because the job is similar as a key worker, whatever your background, and I think that's really important. And I think the other thing just to add in, which is really, really helpful, is, one of the things that Ian raised out of their research, and certainly came out of ours, is there is no one set way to do key working. It's very individual. Remember, quality of life is personal, multifaceted, dynamic, and we've got to think about how we make it personal, multifaceted, dynamic, and responsive to the needs of that young person and their family. So we can have a common time slot, but that doesn't mean to say everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. Everybody's working in a way that works for their young person and their family, and needs to find the way to engage and communicate with that family according to the stresses and strains and the dynamics of that family's life.
I think we've got some few Irina here. Irina, are you there? Because I think you found it. You've sort of done key working. Do you want to comment on your experience?
Hi everybody. Yes, I'm Irina Roncaglia. I'm the clinical leader for psychology at DNS. So thank you, Ian, for that presentation. Just in addition to some of the comments that have been shared so far, when there are challenges in terms of time and in terms of extra work, I just put there some thoughts that is important to clarify right from the onset what the scope and the purpose of a project is, and to share the sort of rationale that through evidence-based, which is this is trying to inform our practices and improve our practices through evidence-based projects, and really to provide that sort of challenging slots of time as opportunities to ultimately improve the outcome of our pupils and our families, as well as, of course, improving the satisfaction of key workers at whatever level they are in the organization, so that they feel a sense of empowerment, as Ian was saying in some of the comments that have been shared by some of the key workers. So just a few thoughts there.
Thank you very much.
I think the move to having key workers and using that time, and I think we went through the period where people were saying, "Oh, something else to do." I think what happens is you start to see that the investment in time on a Friday afternoon pays dividends everywhere else. So it's kind of people having a bit of faith that if we start doing something differently, actually we'll see the benefit in maths, we'll see the benefit in when we go off on school trips, because we're investing in this place. And it is difficult to move from the tested model into something else, but it is, I think, once staff starts to see that actually it's working, and if it isn't working we shouldn't be doing it. I think they buy into it and see, if I've got a good relationship with parents, that's going to really help when there's an issue in the future. If I know what's going on with a young person, I'll know how to help them in their sort of studies or residential. So it's that kind of
Is that moving from one model to another and people believing that it can be different?
Anything else, Rob?
So Lisa was really positive about, just to comment on the thing. Lisa, do you want to just share with the group what your sort of experience was? Or were you happy with just making a comment there? Don't want to. Lisa H.
Yeah, I have to put her on the spot.
KTC used the first quality workshop. It just talked about after 3 kids with her because it's her first workshop about having enough key workers for more than one member staff be more than one key worker. Yes, we do that, Katie, because just to get the right mix sometimes of the right member staff with the right person. Absolutely, again, very individual.
I think there are logistics and practicalities that everybody will have to think of for their own organisation, and depending on how generously staffed you are to the number of boys you've got, that will have an influence. And you might want to think about, if you're just starting down this route, are you going to start with everybody being a key worker, or are you going to start with a small group who will be champions for this sort of system, and then through training and best practice sharing, roll it out over time? So there's different ways of approaching this, but Rob mentioned earlier, we've grown significantly, and I know lots of other schools have grown over the last few years. That's changed the balance between the number of staff we have available and the number of students. So where we can do it one member of staff to child and family, we will, but sometimes we have to do a bit of doubling up. But if we're doing that, we've got to allow the time for that to happen. Yeah. Have we any other questions in the pot there, Dean?
Yeah, did you want to be back on it?
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the report that we've got. I was a bit first after a couple of weeks when the key workers weren't writing much in their journals and needed a bit of a nudge. So I was thinking, what we're going to get out of this, but actually I think we've got some pretty good evidence now. Certainly that it's transferable, and that's one of the aims in terms of trying it across a set of schools. I think the NES schools were given quite a bit of leeway in terms of how they implemented it across schools. So it builds on your point, I think, Kieran, not only as individual but at school level, it's got to go with the grain of the school culture. So yeah, I'm just really interested now. I'm excited about moving on to the next level and trying to quantify some of these benefits, collecting more data to go alongside that.
It'd be interesting to hear, a couple of terms down the line, how that's becoming more embedded in practice in those same schools who contributed to that research. So we'll keep tabs on Ian and get updates.
I'm just wondering whether we produced a key working sort of journal as well, didn't we, of how it's helped. Whether that's useful to share with.
Well, now you see, I'm glad you mentioned that, Rob, because if you sign up for the pie, going to Dean, you'll be able to get access to our key working research, and also some best practice sharing we did around key working, and a key working job description. That's good value, that pie, isn't it, Dean?
It is.
Okay, so I know everybody's really busy, so we might be able to finish a little bit earlier, but there was one other thing, or a couple of other things that I wanted to quickly mention. One was we met with Professor Des Hewitt from Warwick University last week. He joined our governors for a meeting. And we're contributing to his Action Research conference on Friday, and he's very keen to work with us to do some more projects around all aspects of our QoL implementation. Over time, we want to do at least 3 projects a year. When we look at the methodology for those projects, we'll be doing them here, but we'll be happy to share those with network schools. So if you would like to do them as well, you will be able to do that. And at subsequent meetings, we'll be feeding back, a bit like Ian did today, to helpfully so that people can get the benefits of that.
I think it's one step further on that, in a way, isn't it? We're going to try and create something, templates that people can potentially put their own data in, have their own information. So we know how stretched everyone is, we know how busy everyone is trying to use a 2,000 word report or something, but actually that could be really useful for everybody if we can design those in a way that people can have their information in their context of their school, nice and easy, and have some information to share with outside agencies, share with leadership teams, share with families, share with people to see why you're doing what you're doing, not how the rest of it. So hopefully we can be really helpful those as well.
So that will be for next term. So we'll give an update of that at the next meeting. Last one that really we wanted to just talk about, and I'm sure this is on everybody's minds. It's, you know, COVID's taken its toll on all organisations, but in our sector, we really, you know, we've had to be open all the time. Lots of people have had lots of stresses and strains, as well as people who have unfortunately suffered with COVID, as well as the anxieties around our own family lives, etc., etc. It's a big item on the Ofsted agenda. It's a big item because we all want to look after our staff, and we want our staff to feel valued and that we have their best interests at heart. So we're looking at QoL for staff, and we're developing some frameworks around that, which we'll share with you at a meeting next term. But we're interested, and again, if you don't mind just putting some stuff into the chat about what you're doing to support staff well-being. The more we share, not that we can all do all of the things, not that it's appropriate for that, but the more we share, there might be little ideas. And I certainly was at a conference, at the Engage conference in Manchester just after half term, and I was listening to the staff from William Henry Smith School. They had some brilliant ideas on what they were doing to promote staff well-being. And you know, it was really quite inspirational. And I think we've got some things here which we'll chuck in the mix, but I don't know if there is anybody from William Henry on the line today, but if you are, it'd be great to hear some of your ideas there. But anybody else, ideas for how you're helping your staff well-being, QoL, put them into the chat thing and we'll compile a list. I mean, just off the top of your head, a couple of things that we're doing. Got it right. You've done a list.
So we're looking updating our staff room, improving our staff room. We're doing the wellbeing questionnaire, which we're trying to link to quality of life, because that is a question that's come up. We're worried about families, we're worried about young people, what about staff?
Yeah.
So that's come up, and we're looking at, we have supervision within our residential care team and within our therapy teams, but supervision across the whole school. So for people to have that regular check-in, that regular chat about their progress and their well-being, the rest of it. But I think this is something that we would be very keen on ideas, and these are things we haven't started doing yet and we haven't launched yet. So if there's any lessons learned or any things that people can bring or anything like that, with our wellbeing questionnaire, we have aligned ourselves to sort of a national questionnaire where we get data about how people are doing nationally. So we got some context in the data we get.
So we sort of benchmark ours to get other people's sort of.
So if it's in December and the whole nation's feeling about 50%, we know that we're not absolutely 35%. Well, we've got a problem, but if we're on 70%, we're just need to, you know, not still worry about 30%, but know that we're not out to sink as such. So any ideas that anyone's got or any feedback people can give us on that, that'd be great. And we are working a bit of a document to link that back to quality of life as well.
Yeah, we're trying to use the same framework that we've got behind us to think about what does that mean for our staff. Rob, anything else that comes to mind about staff quality of life from your perspective?
No, I mean, just to kind of go back over what Rob's just said there, you know, when we're thinking about staff rooms, we're thinking about how to make that a bit more comfortable, give people a bit of space so they can relax, not just the kind of work thing.
Really?
The question, I haven't told you that. No. The questionnaire is absolutely kind of in the right spirit. It's not, we're not just doing this to kind of tick a box, but because what we know is if the staff are happy and they're engaged and ready for work, then that has a big impact on the young people. Having a load of staff that are down here doesn't actually help us as a school. So it's kind of, these aren't just sort of platitudes we are trying to.
And I think we're all probably in the same boat and in different regions, thinking, you know, trying to recruit staff is not easy. So we all need to look after the staff we have and keep everybody as happy a ship as possible.
And already there's some lovely ideas coming through on the chat. So again, we can
we'll put those together with the other list, and we'll send that out. And we'll try and send that out before the end of term, so that people can think about that in
Is this for free or do we have to subscribe to?
I don't have to be part of the pie for that. Maybe we should make it like that.
So thank you, Katie and Irene, I think again, thank you very much for your, I think it's been fantastic.
Dean, if we leave this meeting open, we're going to draw things to a close unless there's any other comment. If we leave this running for a little bit longer, people can just keep adding into the chat, can they? And then we'll collect all that up?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think we've probably covered enough. Dean, have we stressed how important it is for people to get involved in the pie?
You've mentioned it once or twice.
Yeah, okay, well, that's how you do.
Dean's Pie Shop is open.
Dean's Pie Shop is open. Anything else? Are there any other questions coming in from anybody about anything from this morning or anything related to QoL? We will obviously have another QoL workshop in the first half of next term. We'll be keeping an eye on the COVID situation, which probably means we're going to be online again in the first half of next term, unfortunately. We desperately want to bring you all here. So we'll do that as soon as we possibly can, but I think we'll probably safely say we'll be online first half of next term. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, and I think if people aren't able to travel as well, we'll make sure it's online as well. So people, I know time to time with people, so I think COVID has been a different way of working and people aren't able to sort of come across. But it would be lovely to actually do something in a room together and have a nice lunch.
Yeah. We just have a lunch.
Just have a lunch.
Yeah.
Just don't, not talking about quality improvement, it's
Not your lunch.
Yeah.
Framework.
Dean, is there anything in the chat? Okay. It's a huge Merry Christmas from all of us. We hope you all have a lovely holiday, well-earned rest. You can contact any of us by ringing the school. You can use the QoL at swaycliffepark.co.uk or my personal email address. All of that's on the website. Any questions or any follow-ups that anybody wants to make? Rob, any last comments?
No,
Word of wisdom.
Is your person address you're working?
Am I working?
I'm aligned.
We are. With the nation.
To the nation, yes.
Anything else?
No, thank you very much everyone for coming, and just really want to highlight this is about sharing good practice. It's not, we haven't got it all right. We need as many ideas and we need to reflect on what other people are doing, and that's what we really want it to be, not just thinking that we have the answers, because we haven't, but just maybe if we further along the line doesn't mean we're getting it all right all the time. So we look forward to having feedback from everyone as well.
Thanks for that cheery note, Rob.
Yeah, any questions about any of the IT, any of the how to work, any of this stuff, we're very happy to run through that. It can look quite kind of overwhelming, but it really is quite simple, and we're happy to talk people through it and make it work for them.
Dean, anything from you to round off?
Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay, we look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.